Hello students, welcome to Unit 2 of your supplementary reader, It So Happened. In our previous lesson, we enjoyed listening to a fable. And in the current lesson, it's completely contradictory. As in, we take a completely different toll about what we are going to learn in this chapter. Can you guess how? Looking at the titles of both the units of the text. To explain in brief, Chapter 1 deals with fiction. Fiction is a world of imagination with an intention to make us reflect on our own thoughts. But the current lesson, Children at Work, leaves us an insight of the grievous reality we all live in and yet are unnoticed about the problems they face due to the privileges we all have. Now, before we get into the text, I would like you to ponder around a few questions. That is, have you ever noticed some children working in some shops or your nearby surroundings? I am sure you would have noticed it. And if you have noticed, have you ever wondered why they would have probably been pushed into working at such a young age? Now, please look at your screen to know the major causes of child labour. Child labour. What is child labour? Child labour refers to the exploitation of children through any form of work that deprives children of their childhood, interferes with their ability to attend regular school, and is mentally, physically, and socially or morally harmful. To look into the major causes of child labour, the first and foremost thing is poverty. Poverty is a great contributor of child labour in all the developing countries. Children are considered as helping hands to feed their families, to support their families and themselves. Along with poverty, illiteracy and unemployment of parents in the family are also a major reason why children are pushed to taking the burden and responsibility of the family. There is yet another important reason, which is self-driven for child labour. There are instances of children having run away from unhappy homes and unbearable domestic violence, and eventually they are required to support themselves and become self-reliant, thus forcing themselves to work. Such is the case with Velu, a 11-year-old boy who runs away from an unhappy home. In the part 1 of our text, we learn that the whole story happens in and around Chennai, and that Velu is an outsider who is completely new to the city. Here, Velu lands up in Chennai after wandering for about 6 hours before boarding the train without a ticket. Velu, who was born and until then brought up in a village, was completely anxious and baffled looking at the huge crowd in the station. This sort of a crowd for Velu would only be visible during the fairs at his village, and that is why Velu does not understand what's going on around him. Velu had run away from his home only because he could not stand his father beating him every day after being drunk. Not only this, his father would snatch away all the money that Velu and his sisters would earn for their everyday living. As Velu sat down on a bench after he got down from the train, he felt miserable and exhausted. A lot of confused thoughts ran through his mind, not knowing what to do in a place completely new to him. That is when a girl of his age, wearing a banyan and carrying a huge sack on her back, understood Velu's plight and offered him to find some food. Though Velu seemed to contemplate in the beginning, he finally starts to follow the girl because he is helpless and doesn't know where to go. Before we move on to the part 2 of the text, I want you to go through the comprehension questions on part 1, that is on page number 9, which is also appearing on your screen. Please note that you are requested to solve them yourselves, as the hints to these questions are already discussed in our session. Moving on to part 2 of the text, Velu follows his friend through the crowded streets where he becomes blank seeing the traffic. He is then pulled by his friend, who tells him this serious line in a humorous tone. "What do you think you're doing? Grazing cows? If you stand around in the middle of a road like that, you will be chutney." This particular line gives us a hint that Velu's friend is quite a witty and a humorous person. While he passes by on the street, he finds so many new things in the city that he had never seen before. One among that is the huge placards or the advertisement boards that he sees and tries to read, but then fails miserably because it's all in English, clearly indicating to us that Velu does not have any schooling done before. As they eventually walk down the tall buildings and along stretched bridges of Chennai, Velu observes that his friend is carrying a huge big sack on her bag and asks her about what it is filled with. And that is when she replies to him saying it is filled with materials like bottles, paper cups and other throwable items that is picked up from random garbage bins. This particular instance introduces us to the world of rag picker children. There is a very important line in the part 2 of your text which gives us almost the entire crux of the story, and that is currently on your screen. Please look at it. See that big building with wall around it? If you are not careful, you will soon be counting the bars there. The girl grinned and pointed at a huge building. Velu squinted and read the Tamil sign, Central Jail. Why, I haven't done anything wrong. You don't have to do anything wrong, just don't get caught, that's all. These are the lines where the girl shows the central prison and tells Velu that if he isn't careful enough, he would end up there. Puzzled Velu tells her that he hasn't done any mistake for which he has to be sent to jail. And that is when the girl replies to him with the last line that you all saw on your screen. This clearly denotes to us that it is completely illegal for anyone to profess child labour. Under the Constitution of India, it is illegal for children of their age to work in any sort of firms or industries or even rag picking, and that is why she clearly tells him that he has to be very careful about not getting caught, because though he has not done any mistake, for his age, going to work itself is against the law. After a long walk of almost about an hour, both Velu and his friend stopped at a big marriage hall. In the later part, the girl gives him a choice to stay back in the marriage hall until lunch so that when people throw more food during lunch, Velu can fill his stomach better. But then Velu asks what the girl's plan is, for which she replies saying she has to go get back to work because there will be a lot of the people coming to take over her job. And that is when Velu thinks twice about not wanting to stay back here, as he doesn't know anything of the city, whereas the girl knows each and every bit of what she is doing in a new city for Velu. That is why Velu tries to follow her back and says that he would accompany her wherever she is going. Coming to the end of part 2, here are the comprehension questions assigned to you on page number 13, also appearing on your screen. These questions are for you to solve using the video session as your reference, as it has already been discussed here. Now, moving on to part 3 of our text, here the girl, Velu's friend, confesses her name as Jaya and then takes Velu to her hut to dump the overflowing sack on her back and then get a new bag in order to fill it again. Velu finds the place very strange, as the row of huts near the dirty puddles were built out of all sorts of materials like metal sheets, tires, bricks, wood and plastic. Velu is astonished seeing this, as he is only used to seeing huts made of mud and palm leaves in his village. Jaya then dumps all the materials collected by her in front of the house and then empties the sack in order to take another sack to collect more materials. She also handovers one of an empty bags to Velu, saying, "You also have to collect some of the materials like I do." Velu innocently replies to this context, asking Jaya if there are any farms for him to work in the city, because Velu is only used to working on farms in his village. For this, Jaya laughs at him and says that there are no farms or farmers in the city, rather they are all just rag pickers. This line particularly emphasizes to us about the work or the sort of job these children are put into. And look at the line popping out on your screen, which emphasizes the job of these children. Velu gets puzzled about what to be done with the collected material of waste which he has never heard before. Velu is thinking whether this can be a job at all. That is when Jaya tells him that they do not collect the waste without a purpose. They collect all the waste which is recyclable, that is materials like bottles or paper cups, and put it together in front of Jam Bazar Jaggu. That is a person who collects all the waste materials in the city and then takes it to the factory for recycling. When handed over the bag to collect some materials from the garbage, Velu is completely hesitant in the beginning. But later on, Velu cleverly thinks that he has to sustain with the job that he has at the moment, and he is definitely grateful to Jaya, who has showed him a pathway in the new city. So he takes up the job until he finds a better job and starts doing it along with Jaya. We have now come to the end of the lesson, leaving you behind some comprehension questions to be solved on page number 15. As the other questions also are being told to you, this is already been discussed in your session, and I would like you to use this as reference in order to solve these questions appearing on your screen. Now that we have gone through some of the harsh and grave realities of our society, here is something for you to think and be aware of and also act upon as responsible citizens and also children of our country. We all are indeed very privileged, aren't we? Child labor deprives children of their beautiful childhood and also their right to education. The experiences that we all have had will probably never be felt by many children in our country right now. And this is why it is all of our responsibility to stop child labor wherever you witness it. If this is not stopped, it will reinforce intergenerational cycles of poverty. And that is why we all have to be responsible in order to stop it when we witness it. Children, I hope you all had an enjoyable and a productive session. Thank you. Bye.